I hadn't been home in 6 years. I'd like to say it was for some deep, dramatic reason. A tragic falling out, a scandalous betrayal. But honestly, it was just life. I left for a job in London right after graduation. And between the pandemic work deadlines and a messy breakup, the years just slipped by. Family calls became shorter, texts less frequent, and eventually my place at the dinner table felt more like a memory than a reality. Still, when I finally booked my flight back for Thanksgiving, I thought it would be a hallmark moment. Hugs at the airport, warm smiles, maybe even a few tears. I was so wrong. My plane landed late Wednesday evening, and I fired off a text to the family group chat. Landed, can't wait to see everyone. I even threw in a little plane emoji, trying to match the cheerful energy I hoped they'd meet me with. Silence, not even a thumbs up from my cousin Mia, who usually lives in the group chat. I brushed it off, grabbed my bag, and made my way through the terminal. Maybe they were just busy with dinner prep. I told myself it's a big holiday after all. By the time I reached the pickup area, the chill of the evening had sunk deep into my bones. I pulled my jacket tighter, scanning the line of cars for a familiar face. Nothing. I waited and waited. 10 minutes turned into 20, then 30. Finally, I shot my mom a quick text. Hey, just landed. Are you guys on your way? 2 bubbles appeared, then vanished. Then a single line came through. Just Uber, we're busy. I stared at the message, my stomach dropping like the temperature outside. I mean, I hadn't expected a parade, but being told to just Uber home after 6 years? That stung. I hauled my suitcase to the curb and ordered a ride, trying to swallow the sharp lump forming in my throat. The driver was chatty, a retired teacher who loved talking about his grandkids. I forced a few polite laughs, nodding along as he reminisced about family trips to Disney and big holiday gatherings. It only made the silence from my own family hit harder. We pulled into my parents' driveway just as the sky turned a deep navy blue. The house looked the same. A little more worn around the edges maybe, but still the same split-level suburban classic I grew up in. I rolled my suitcase up to the front door, expecting the burst of warmth and chatter to spill out the moment I stepped inside. Instead, I found a stiff, cool silence. The faint smell of turkey and cinnamon drifted from the kitchen, but no one came to the door. I knocked once, then pushed it open. They were all in the dining room. A sea of faces gathered around the long, polished table, silverware clinking against plates. Not a single head turned my way, not even a glance. I stood there, suitcase in hand, framed in the doorway like some forgotten stranger. Finally, my Aunt Laura looked up from her mashed potatoes and gave a small, dismissive sniff. Oh, you decided to show up? Don't expect a warm welcome. I blinked, half expecting someone to crack a grin to reveal it was just a bad joke. No one did. My cousin Jake, his mouth still full, muttered, Didn't think you'd actually make it. Figured you'd ghost like usual. I forced a smile, fighting the sudden sharp sting behind my eyes. Nice to see you too. I glanced around, looking for an empty seat. The table was packed, every chair filled, even the kids' table wedged awkwardly against the far wall. I caught my mom's eye, hoping for a little maternal warmth, but she just took a sip of her wine and looked away. I cleared my throat. Is there a seat for me, or... Mom barely lifted her head. We weren't sure if you'd actually come. There's a folding chair in the garage if you want. A folding chair. For her son back after 6 years, I felt my face flush, my pulse thudding in my ears. I stood there a moment longer, my suitcase still in hand, waiting for someone, anyone, to make a move to pull a chair closer or at least slide over a bit. But they just kept eating, ignoring me like a bad afterthought. I turned on my heel, heading for the kitchen instead. If they didn't have a seat for me, I'd just grab a plate and eat somewhere less suffocating. I found a half-filled platter of cold mashed potatoes on the counter next to a dish of limp green beans. No turkey, no stuffing, just the scraps. I grabbed a plate, spooned on a pile of potatoes, and leaned against the counter, eating in the echoing silence of the kitchen, while muffled laughter and clinking glasses filtered in from the dining room. And that's when it hit me. A cold, hard truth. that settled deep in my chest, pushing out the last bits of nostalgia and sentimental warmth. I wasn't really part of this family anymore. Not in the way I'd hoped. I was a ghost at my own homecoming, a stranger at a table that once felt like the center of my world. I took a deep breath, set my plate in the sink, and wiped my hands on a dish towel. Maybe it was time to stop trying to fit into a place that had clearly moved on without me. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. Not by a long shot. They might have erased me from the family portrait, but I was about to redraw myself in the boldest, sharpest strokes they'd ever seen. The morning after my grand return, I woke up to the hum of the neighbor's leaf blower, a fittingly abrasive soundtrack to match my mood. I had crashed on the old, lumpy, pull-out couch in the basement, the same one I used to nap on during lazy summer afternoons as a kid. Now the springs dug into my back like sharp little reminders that I was no longer welcome. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and reached for my phone. No new messages, no missed calls. Just a few random notifications from apps I barely used. I sighed, tossing my phone aside. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe I just needed to give them time to warm up to adjust to my presence again. After a quick cold shower, because apparently my brother had used up all the hot water, I made my way upstairs hoping for a more welcoming vibe. Instead, I found my Aunt Laura in the kitchen clanging pots and pans around like she was building a drum set. She barely glanced up as I entered. "Oh, you're up. Coffee's over there." She jabbed a wooden spoon toward the half-empty pot, steam curling from the spout. I poured myself a cup, took a long, bitter sip, and leaned against the counter, watching her stir what looked like the beginnings of a breakfast casserole. "Morning," I offered, trying to sound casual, like I hadn't spent the night tossing and turning, replaying every cold shoulder and dismissive comment from the night before. She didn't bother looking up morning. I tried again. "So, anything planned for today? I thought maybe we could do something, catch up a bit." This time she did look up, her eyes narrowing slightly as if I had just suggested we rob a bank together. "We've got a lot to do. You know how it is." She turned back to her casserole, her tone as dry as the overcooked turkey I'd picked at the night before. I took another sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch. I could feel my patience thinning, my initial optimism fraying like the old kitchen curtains swaying in the drafty window behind her. I decided to cut my losses and head for the door, hoping a brisk walk around the block might clear my head. As I grabbed my jacket, my cousin Jake sauntered in, rubbing his eyes and yawning like he hadn't just slept in my old bed in the room that used to be mine. He froze for a moment when he saw me, his expression a mix of surprise and mild annoyance, like he'd forgotten I was even there. "Morning," I said again, forcing a smile. He just grunted, grabbed a mug from the cabinet, and poured himself a cup of coffee. He didn't even bother saying hi, just shuffled past me like I was a piece of furniture. I let the door slam a little harder than necessary as I stepped outside the cold November air, hitting me like a slap to the face. I shoved my hands into my pockets and started down the driveway, my breath coming out in quick, angry puffs. I had spent years abroad building a life for myself, learning new languages, making friends, creating memories that had shaped me into someone I was actually proud of. And yet here I felt like the awkward teenager who had never quite fit in, the black sheep who had dared to stray too far from the flock. By the time I reached the end of the block, my anger had simmered into something colder, something sharper. I realized that coming back here had been a mistake, a hopeful, naive mistake. I had expected warmth, a sense of belonging, maybe even a bit of overdue appreciation. Instead, I had been met with indifference and thinly veiled disdain. As I turned back toward the house, my jaw tightened. If they wanted to act like I didn't belong, fine, I would give them a reason to miss me. I had been the dutiful son, the reliable tech support, the one they leaned on whenever something broke or someone forgot a password. But if they couldn't even be bothered to pull up a chair for me, then maybe it was time I stopped playing my part in this twisted family play. I made my way back up the driveway, my heart thudding in time with my footsteps. I paused at the front door, taking a deep breath before pushing it open. My aunt glanced up, her expression a mask of mild surprise as I stepped back into the kitchen. "Decided to come back?" she asked, one eyebrow arched. I met her gaze, my lips curving into a small, tight smile. "Yeah, just remembered something I need to take care of." She gave a small, confused nod and turned back to her casserole, missing the fire that had reignited behind my eyes. I headed down to the basement, grabbed my laptop, and fired it up. If they wanted to treat me like a ghost, I'd make damn sure they felt my absence when I finally walked out that door. For good this time. I wasn't just going to fade into the background. No, this time I was going to leave a mark. I spent the rest of that morning in the basement, my fingers flying across my laptop's keyboard. If my family wanted to treat me like a ghost, then I would haunt them in the most practical, painful way possible. It wasn't about revenge, not at first. It was about taking back the control they had so casually stripped from me. The first thing I did was log into the family Dropbox, a digital graveyard of poorly labeled files, mismatched PDFs, and forgotten spreadsheets. I had set it up years ago, back when I was still the go-to tech support, back when they still counted on me to handle all the complicated stuff. Taxes, HOA payments, mortgage documents. It was all in there, and as usual, it was a mess. I started by sorting through the chaos, moving critical files into locked folders that only I had the passwords for. If they wanted my help, they were going to have to ask nicely. No more treating me like a forgotten side dish at Thanksgiving. Next, I checked the shared family email account I had set up for my mom years ago. She had never really bothered to learn how to use it properly, leaving me to manage it by default. I scanned through the cluttered inbox, finding everything from overdue property tax notices to missed HOA meeting reminders. I chuckled, shaking my head at the sheer volume of ignored deadlines. They had leaned on me so much they'd forgotten how to stand on their own. With a few clicks, I changed the recovery emails and passwords, locking them out of every shared account they had taken for granted. I wasn't cutting them off, not yet, but I was putting them on notice. They would have to come to me if they wanted their digital house in order. Feeling a bit lighter, I leaned back in my creaky old chair, staring at the fading wallpaper of my childhood bedroom. Or what used to be my bedroom before they turned it into a cluttered sewing room. I closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. The awkward family dinners, the whispered criticisms, the years of feeling like I was never quite enough. I wasn't that kid anymore. I had grown, built a life for myself halfway around the world, and I wasn't about to let them drag me back into that suffocating role of the family fixer. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could hear the muffled clatter of dishes upstairs, the faint hum of a vacuum as someone cleaned up the remnants of last night's feast. They were up there, going about their morning, oblivious to the digital chaos I had just set in motion. After a moment's thought, I pulled up my banking app. I had been the one handling my mom's online payments for years. Auto-pay setups, utility bills, even her insurance renewals. She'd never bothered to learn how to do it herself, always just sending me a quick, demanding text whenever something needed fixing. I clicked through the transaction history, my lips curling into a slight smirk as I noticed the dozens of small, unmentioned reimbursements, expenses I had covered without so much as a thank you, groceries, lawn care, even a few surprise birthday party deposits for my cousins. I had been their financial safety net for too long, and it was time to cut the cord. I canceled the auto payments, reset the banking passwords, and removed my number as the recovery contact. I wasn't about to be their personal bank and tech support anymore. Just as I hit save on the final settings, Change My Phone buzzed on the desk beside me. It was my cousin Jake, his name flashing across the screen. I hesitated for a moment, then picked up. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. There was a pause on the other end, a small, surprised breath, like he hadn't expected me to actually pick up. "Hey man, we've got a little problem." "Yeah," I leaned back in my chair, forcing myself to sound casual. "It's the Dropbox. I can't get in. Keep saying the password's wrong." I allowed myself a small smile. "That's weird. Haven't touched it in a while." Another pause. I could almost hear him chewing on his bottom lip, trying to decide how to phrase his next sentence without sounding like he needed my help. "You mind resetting it? We've got some stuff in there we need for the accountant." I drummed my fingers against the edge of the desk, savoring the small, satisfying twinge of power that surged through me. I'll look into it when I get a chance. Pretty busy, though. There was a faint, frustrated sigh on the other end. Yeah, cool. Just, if you get a minute. Sure thing, I said, letting the silence stretch a second longer before hanging up. I leaned back, letting out a slow, steady breath. It wasn't much, just a tiny, calculated twist of the knife, but it felt good. For once, I wasn't the one left feeling small, left scrambling to make things right. As I closed the laptop, the old hinges creaking in protest, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the dark screen. I looked different. A little older, a little sharper around the edges. I had a long way to go, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally in control of my own story. The first real pushback came that afternoon, not long after Jake's awkward phone call. I had just made myself a sandwich. The kind with the thick, crusty bread that I used to steal bites of as a kid, despite my mom's warnings about ruining my appetite. When my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. I hadn't heard her voice in months, and I wasn't exactly eager for a lecture, but curiosity and maybe a small hint of masochism won out. I swiped to answer. Hello. Bryce, she said. Her tone sharp, every syllable clipped like the snip of a pair of kitchen scissors. What did you do to the Dropbox? I felt a small, wicked thrill at the question. She hadn't even bothered with a greeting. No warm welcome or motherly concern. Just straight to business. Classic mom. Not sure what you mean, I replied, leaning against the kitchen counter and taking a bite of my sandwich, the crunch loud in the otherwise silent room. Don't play games with me, she snapped. Jake can't access his files, and your Aunt Laura says her tax documents are missing. I chewed slowly, letting the silence drag out just long enough for her irritation to sharpen. I didn't touch anything. Maybe they just forgot the password. She huffed, the sound sharp enough to cut through the static of the call. This isn't funny, Bryce. If you did something, just fix it. We don't have time for this nonsense. I swallowed my bite, letting the taste of fresh bread and sharp cheddar linger on my tongue. Mom, I'm just doing what you told me to do. What are you talking about? Her tone shifted, tinged with a mix of confusion and growing frustration. You said not to ruin the evening for everyone. Remember, I'm just staying out of your way. There was a long, heavy pause on the line, the kind that stretched like a tightrope between us. I could almost picture her standing in the kitchen with her perfectly manicured nails gripping the phone, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. Don't be dramatic, she finally said, her voice colder now. Family is family. You can't just shut everyone out because of a little misunderstanding. I let out a low, humorless chuckle, the sound surprising even me, a little misunderstanding. You ignored me, froze me out, and then acted like my return was some kind of inconvenience. And now what you need me to clean up your digital mess, and I'm just supposed to jump at the chance. Bryce, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Enough with the self-pity. We've all been busy, we have lives. If you weren't so selfish, you'd understand that. I felt my jaw tighten, a slow burn creeping up my spine. I had spent years swallowing my pride, bending over backward to stay connected to be part of this family that had clearly moved on without me. But this time I wasn't just going to roll over and take it. Busy, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Too busy to even save me a seat at the table. Too busy to remember I exist. There was a faint, irritated sigh on the other end. You're being ridiculous. No. I shot back, my voice rising, despite myself. I'm done being ridiculous. I'm done being the one who always has to reach out to play peacekeeper to fix everyone else's problems while you all act like I'm an outsider. She was silent, the only sound on the line. The faint hum of the refrigerator behind me. I took a deep breath, forcing my pulse to slow my grip on the phone to loosen. I'm not your fixer anymore, I said, each word deliberate and final. If you want my help, you're going to have to ask for it, and you're going to have to actually mean it. For a moment, I thought she might hang up. The silence stretched tense and brittle like the crackling edges of a slow-burning fire. Then finally she spoke, her voice low and strained. "You're making a mistake. Bryce, family is family. You'll regret this." I forced a tight smile, one she couldn't see but might have felt through the cold static of the line, maybe. "But at least this time it'll be my mistake, not yours." I ended the call, my heart pounding, my hands shaking slightly as I set the phone down on the counter. I closed my eyes, taking a deep, steadying breath, feeling the sharp, clean air fill my lungs. I had never been the one to draw lines, to set boundaries, to push back when my family leaned too hard. But this time, I wasn't backing down. I was done being the forgotten son, the convenient problem solver, the one they only noticed when something needed fixing. I took another bite of my sandwich, the simple, satisfying crunch of the bread somehow grounding a small reminder that I still had control over at least one thing in my life. And as I chewed, I started to plan my next move. The next few days passed in a tense, awkward dance. My family avoided me, their eyes sliding over me like I was just another piece of furniture they'd grown tired of. It stung, but I leaned into it, using the cold shoulder as fuel. I hadn't come home to beg for scraps of affection, and if they wanted to treat me like a ghost, then I'd haunt them in ways they'd never forget. By Friday afternoon, the house had settled into a tense silence. I was down in the basement, scrolling through old photos on my laptop, when a new email notification flashed in the corner of the screen. It was from my Uncle Tom, subject line, blunt and impatient. "Access needed ASAP." I clicked it open, half expecting a half-hearted apology, or at least a polite request. Instead, it was just a single curt line: "Reset the Dropbox. Your aunt can't find her files." I felt my jaw tighten, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as a fresh wave of irritation washed over me. Not even a please or a thanks in advance, just a demand like I was some unpaid IT intern. I took a deep breath, letting my pulse slow before typing out a reply. "Sorry, I'm not available for tech support at the moment. Maybe try resetting the password or reaching out to Dropbox support directly." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, leaning back in my creaky chair as a small, bitter smile crept onto my lips. Barely 5 minutes passed before my phone started buzzing. I glanced down to see my uncle's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring, savoring the small, petty thrill of ignoring him for once. He left a voicemail, his tone sharp and clearly irritated. "Bryce, this isn't funny. Just fix the damn Dropbox. We don't have time for your little games." I deleted the message without even bothering to listen to the end, feeling a strange, unexpected lightness in my chest. It was like a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying had suddenly lifted. A few minutes later, another text popped up, this time from my cousin Jake. "Jake, dude, Mom's freaking out. Just reset the damn thing. It'll take you like 2 seconds." I stared at the message, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard, debating whether to even bother replying. Finally, I settled on a simple, blunt response. Not my problem." The 3 little dots indicating his typing flickered for a moment, then disappeared. I leaned back, smirking as the basement light flickered overhead, casting faint, dancing shadows on the old, peeling wallpaper. For the first time in years, I felt like I was the one holding the strings, the one in control. It was a strange, heady sensation, like standing at the edge of a cliff and leaning just a little too far forward, feeling the wind tug at your clothes, the ground falling away beneath you. Later that evening, as I sat in the old recliner my dad had stubbornly refused to throw out, I heard footsteps creaking down the basement stairs. I glanced up to see my mom, her face set in a tight, forced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Hey," she said, folding her arms as she stopped at the bottom step. "We need to talk." I raised an eyebrow, setting my laptop aside. "About what?" She sighed, her fingers tightening around her crossed arms. "About this attitude of yours. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're making things harder for everyone." I bit back the urge to laugh, my hands clenching into fists on the worn armrests. "Oh, I'm making things harder. That's rich." She took a slow, deep breath, her eyes narrowing. "Bryce, this isn't funny. You're being petty. I know you feel left out, but that doesn't mean you get to act like a child." I felt a sharp, sudden pang in my chest. my old insecurities flaring up like a fresh wound. But I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my throat, forcing my voice to stay steady. Left out. You all made it pretty clear I'm not part of this family anymore. You didn't even save me a seat at dinner. She flinched, her eyes flicking to the old dusty TV in the corner, as if hoping it might save her from this uncomfortable conversation. We didn't know if you'd actually show up. You're always so unpredictable. Unpredictable. I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. I've been the one keeping this family running from 1,000 miles away. I fixed your tax issues, set up your accounts, managed your bills, and you can't even bother to pick me up from the airport. She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off, the words spilling out faster than I could stop them. You've taken me for granted for years, and I'm done playing the fixer. You want access to the Dropbox. Figure it out yourself. You want your accounts organized. Hire someone. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air, clearly not used to being spoken to like this. Finally, she straightened her lips, pressing into a thin, furious line. Fine, if that's how you want it. Don't expect us to come running the next time you screw up your life. I forced a bitter, tight-lipped smile. Trust me, I'm not expecting anything from any of you anymore. She turned on her heel, her footsteps echoing sharply on the creaky wooden stairs as she stormed back up to the main floor, the door slamming shut behind her. I leaned back in the recliner, closing my eyes as my pulse slowly returned to normal. The silence that settled around me felt different this time. Heavier, but also somehow freeing. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually standing up for myself, breaking the chains that had kept me tethered to this suffocating family dynamic for far too long. And I wasn't done yet. The house felt colder after that confrontation, the walls seeming to close and the silence heavier, like a thick fog clinging to every creaking floorboard and flickering light. My family had always been good at avoiding uncomfortable truths, at papering over cracks with forced smiles and shallow small talk. But this time I had ripped off the mask and there was no going back. I could feel their resentment in every stiff glance, every tight-lipped conversation that fell silent when I entered the room. My mom barely spoke to me. My Uncle Tom avoided me entirely, and Jake had retreated back to his corner, sulking like a child cut off from his favorite video game. It was the Sunday after Thanksgiving when the real blow-up happened. I was in the basement, throwing my clothes back into my suitcase, determined to leave this house for good when my phone buzzed. It was a group chat notification. The one I had muted months ago, back when my family's passive-aggressive messages had started to feel more like white noise than actual communication. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, just letting the message fade into the digital void along with all the other ignored pleas and veiled insults. But curiosity won out and I unlocked my phone. Family group, chat, Uncle Tom. Bryce, this has gone on long enough. You need to fix the Dropbox or we're going to miss critical deadlines. You're being selfish. Jake, yeah man, this isn't cool. You've made your point. Now stop acting like a kid and just fix it. Aunt Laura, Bryce. I can't find my tax records and the accountant is getting impatient. You're putting all of us in a difficult position. My jaw tightened, the heat rising in my chest like a slow, simmering fire. They still didn't get it. They still thought they could snap their fingers and I'd come running, that I'd fix their problems like I always had. I leaned back against the cold concrete wall, my phone clutched tightly in my hand, the old musty scent of the basement seeping into my nose, the sound of the ancient washing machine humming in the corner. I took a deep breath, my mind racing, the familiar urge to fix, to smooth over, to please, clawing at the edges of my resolve. But then I remembered the cold, dismissive faces at Thanksgiving, the empty place at the table, the stinging silence that had wrapped around me like a noose from the moment I walked through that door. No, I wasn't going to fall back into that role. Not this time. I typed out a single short message, my fingers moving quickly, each keystroke a small act of rebellion. Me, if you want my help, you can start by apologizing for the way you've treated me. Until then, figure it out yourselves. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. my heart thudding loudly in my chest, the echoes of my own words bouncing off the basement walls. A few moments later, the dots started flickering as someone typed. Then the messages poured in one after another, their tone shifting from disbelief to outrage in record time. Uncle Tom, you're being dramatic. This isn't about feelings, it's about responsibility. Aunt Laura, we raised you better than this family helps each other. Jake, you're being a real piece of work. You know that. We're your family. Stop acting like a stranger. I felt a cold, sharp laugh bubble up in my throat, the absurdity of it all hitting me like a slap to the face. Family helps each other. Where had that attitude been when I stood in their doorway, suitcase in hand, 6 years of distance wrapped around me like a shroud? I closed the group chat without replying, my pulse racing, my mind clearer than it had been in years. I was done being their doormat, their silent tech support, their invisible backbone. I grabbed my suitcase, zipped it shut, and headed up the stairs, the old wood creaking beneath my feet. I passed my mom in the hallway, her eyes narrowing as I approached. "Where are you going?" She snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I paused, meeting her cold, calculating gaze with a steady, unblinking stare. "I'm leaving." She blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. "What? Just like that? You're running away again?" I felt a bitter, mocking smile twist my lips. "I'm not running. I'm just choosing not to stay where I'm not wanted." She opened her mouth to fire back, but I didn't give her the chance. I brushed past her, my suitcase wheels clicking against the tile as I made my way to the front door. As I reached for the handle, I paused, my fingers tightening around the cold metal. I glanced over my shoulder, catching one last glimpse of the house I had once called home, the place that had shaped me, scarred me, and tried to break me. "Thanks for making it so easy," I said, my voice low and steady, each word a final cutting blow. And then I stepped outside, the cold November air hitting my face like a cleansing shock, the door slamming shut behind me with a satisfying final thud. As I walked down the driveway, the weight on my shoulders seemed to lift, the sharp, biting wind carrying away the last remnants of guilt, of regret, of the long-held need for approval that had kept me tethered to this toxic, one-sided relationship for far too long. I climbed into my rental car, my hands steady on the wheel, the engine rumbling to life beneath me. I took one last look at the old house, the crooked shutters, the cracked driveway, the faint glow of the kitchen light through the front window, and felt nothing but relief. I pulled out onto the street, the tires crunching over dry leaves, the radio crackling to life with an old, familiar tune I hadn't heard in years. I turned it up, the music filling the small, warm space of the car as I drove away, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror until it was nothing but a fading, distant shadow. I wasn't sure where I was going next, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally moving forward. Story 2. My dad went my brother and his boys fishing on Father's Day. I learned from pictures on the internet I gave him a call. "You're not a member of this family the way they are," he added. "What did that imply?" I asked. "You're a disappointment," he remarked. "I keep the fact that you are my son a secret." When my mother called, she asked, "Why are you causing trouble again?" "Give them time to enjoy the day." "Understood," I responded. That evening, I broke off communication. I later made a choice that really got to them. "They're rapping on my door now. Talk to us, please. You are necessary to us." Due to its length and the fact that I don't publish much, this is likely to be forgotten. However, I'm not sure who else I should disclose this to. Maybe I'll be roasted or someone will receive it. Not sure. In addition, I'm unable to sleep, so I'm composing this on my phone in my kitchen, so that's why it's messy. Father's Day occurred on Sunday, and to be honest, I didn't give it much thought at first. My family isn't particularly close-knit, but they also aren't the silent sort. There is typically spam in group chats, maybe in the form of memes. Everyone should contact Dad or anything this year since my mom is feeling guilty. Nothing. Neither my dad nor my brother texted, or even my mother. It was strange, but not particularly strange. They simply get busy. Sometimes, thought that they could be accomplishing something, I could get a call from them later. Then, as usual, I'm browsing through tales on my phone when my cousin uploads a grainy photo of a group of smiling folks on a pier holding up fish. I didn't give it much thought until I noticed, wait, that's my brother Dad and his 2 boys. I can also make out my uncle and a few other relatives in the background. Thus, it's obvious that this is a full thing, rather than only a chance fishing activity. In the center, looking like he just won the lotto, is my dad, displaying this unsightly catfish at the lake where we used to spend our childhood. I zoom in. Yes, without a doubt, it's them. I simply go through my texts again as if I could have missed anything, but nothing is there. Not even, hey, would you like to come out? Don't bring any chips. Nothing. I even look over the previous group conversation. Simply dead. To be honest, it hurt. In addition, I was more perplexed than anything else. For example, I haven't had any major arguments with anyone recently, and last week I was actually at my parents' house helping my dad, who despises technology, set up his new phone. He remained silent about this, simply behaved normally. It bothers me for a long because he even asked if I could assist him get his email to function. I'm trying not to seem sour when I contact my brother Caleb to let him know that you guys are at the lake I'm left on read by him. I try calling my dad directly because I believe whatever the case may be, it's better to get it done. He takes it up. Not even a hello. It sounds irritated, as if I had interrupted something significant. I inquire as to if they're enjoying themselves. I inquire as to whether they are at Lake Charlie, but he behaves as like he has no idea what I am talking about. That's where it is? Yeah, we're out here, he adds after becoming silent. Father's Day is today. You are aware of the situation. I'm going to be direct. Why wasn't I invited? And he sounds as though he's fed up with me. Claims that it's just for the true family claims. I'm not involved. The nature of Caleb and his boys. He's being really serious, but I actually chuckle because I assume he's kidding. What even does that imply? I wonder, you're a disappointment, Bruce. He says, I no longer refer to you as my son. All I do is look at the wall. It sounds like people are fooling around in the background. A fish is being yelled at. He responds, yes, Mom is here, when I inquire whether she is. She's on the line all of a sudden. She has her, I just woke her up at 3 a.m. and I'm exhausted. She claims that I constantly cause trouble. Why am I unable to let them enjoy their day? Let them have fun. Give up attempting to bring everyone down. She simply sighs and says, Bruce, please just let it be for once. When I ask her if she truly believes that I'm doing that, I simply respond, okay, understood. I then end the call. Since it's my phone and I'm not a moron, I don't bang it down or anything. But I place it on the counter so forcefully that it rattles my cup. Then it simply becomes silent. I attempt, but am unable to do anything else. I go out back and spend some time sitting on the stairs, avoid smoking altogether. Last year I gave up. No more of this nonsense. I can't stop asking myself, did I do something wrong? Did I overlook something important? However, nothing, I always come up, lend a hand, and remain focused. Although I'm not flawless, I'm not a criminal or anything. I suppose I simply don't meet their definition of a true son. I begin to recall all the minor instances like this, such as last year's birthday. I just received a text from them. No supper, nothing. My dad told me to be more responsible when my car broke down. Dad braved the weather to assist Caleb when his car broke down, never voiced any complaints. Though I assumed it was just my imagination, I always had a sneaking suspicion that I was the odd one out. As it happens, they do see it, and they are simply no longer concealing it. My phone buzzes as soon as I return inside. I notice it's a text message from my mother. Don't make this a thing, please. Please, not even a query. I go black on them right there. I don't respond. I remove my dad's contact information, mute their calls, and disable the group chat. I remove their photos off my fridge and phone. I have no idea why. It's simply the right thing to do. That night, I slept like a piece of garbage, In an attempt to understand what I did, I kept playing back the call in my mind. But eventually, I just lose my temper. Like, screw this, I'm not pleading for inclusion. You want just the actual ones in your family? All right, enjoy yourself. Observe how things turn out when I'm not here to clean up your mess. Because this is the problem. For years, I've been the one dealing with all of their nonsense tech bills. Even a few financial items due to my dad's inability to utilize internet banking. They never gave me credit for it. I pretended that it was my work. I suppose I've always hoped they'll notice or just treat me the same as everyone else, but they haven't. To be honest, I'm sick of pretending that it doesn't bother me. I will not attempt to please them. So Sunday, it was. Since then, I have not heard anything. They usually come running when anything breaks or someone needs money, so I know they'll do it eventually. However, I don't believe I care this time. Scratch that, actually. In any case, I kind of look forward to it. I'm not sure whether this has ever happened to anyone or if I'm simply venting. And now that I've finished it, I feel strangely at ease with it. It turns out that Father's Day 2024 was the year I discovered I wasn't even related. I don't know what will happen next, but I won't accept it. Not now. I'm going to go eat the remaining pizza for the time being, but I'll update if something crazy occurs. I was not invited for LOL. One update. Okay, the next round is here. Things escalated much more quickly than I anticipated, but I didn't anticipate returning so quickly. I suppose I'll simply be as honest as I can because of the crazy energy some of you brought to my last post. I won't go into too much about profound life lessons or anything like that. That's exactly what transpired next. I thus went into full ghost mode following Father's Day. I banned the primary numbers and silenced the group chat. But I left some people unblocked since I wanted to test how long it would take for someone to notice my absence. Not long at all. It turns out my brother Caleb sent me one of those missed call alerts the next morning, but I chose to ignore it. My mother texts me around 2 hours later, "Could you please assist with Dad's TV?" "Bro," he continues, "it's not working again." I meant to perform tech support now that I was told I'm not family. I simply let her read. That must have been my first taste of retaliation, but to be honest, it didn't feel like enough. The group conversation is bustling once more by Tuesday. On my lock screen, I can see the preview. I wanted to see them wriggle a little, so I muted instead of leaving. The mothers of Caleb and me were mostly saying things like, "Don't ignore us, it's childish. Caleb has the quintessential bro quit making everything strange for everyone. This is what you usually do." True originality, huh? I seem to irritate them more when I don't answer than when I simply curse at them. I go about my day, vacuum my flat, buy groceries, and play around online every few hours. One more text. But nothing from my dad, which isn't shocking at all. That guy will pretend to be the victim after waiting for everyone else to finish his dirty deed. This is when things start to get a little interesting. A little backstory. I've been in charge of many of the family's mundane tasks for the past several years, including phone plans, utilities, and even some of the account logins for my dad's side business. I put everything he needs for business online because he hardly uses his own phone. I was never compensated for it. I never received gratitude. I was just instructed to handle it since I am familiar with computers. I therefore understood that it's okay if they want to cut me off. They are capable of solving all those problems on their own. I then sign in to the utilities shared account. I start by making sure all of the bills are current. Each month, I give them money. They simply send me money via Venmo, sometimes promptly, and other times not at all. I send the service a generic email instructing them to transfer the account to my dad's name, remove my card, and remove my name from the list of authorized users. I then follow the same procedure with the phone plans. "Only you and your father are in charge of your own lines," I text my brother. "I'm finished now. No drama. No happy face." I hold off for a day. Nothing. Then the calls start. Caleb, of course, is the first. He leaves this super passive-aggressive voicemail about how I'm making a big deal out of nothing and how Dad's too old for this stress. I don't answer. My mom's next. She's crying, I can hear it in her voice, but she's also mad, like saying I'm being unfair. I feel a little bad, but then I remember Sunday and it goes away. By Thursday, my dad finally calls. He doesn't even say hi, just launches into how I'm being dramatic, how I always do this, how I'm hurting the family. I push back. Tell him he made it clear I'm not family, so why should I do family chores? He tries to say he didn't mean it like that, but then immediately says, I need to stop acting out and grow up. I tell him to put the accounts in his name or lose the services, then hang up. He calls back. I don't answer. While all this is happening, I'm getting texts from my aunt, dad's sister, and even one from my cousin, the one who posted the fishing pic asking what happened. I just sent screenshots of the text from my dad and mom. No explanation, just the facts. I'm not getting into a whole drama spiral with the extended family, but I also don't want them thinking I just flipped out for no reason. Friday is when stuff really starts to fall apart for them. My brother texts me in all caps. Why is the internet off? Dad is freaking out. I tell him to call the company. It's not my issue. He tries to call me. I send it to voicemail. My mom shows up at my apartment, knocks for like 5 minutes, and when I open the door, she tries to just walk past me into the kitchen like always. I block her with my arm. Tell her she can't just come in. She pushes past me anyway. Goes straight to the fridge and then starts in on how I'm ruining everything. I ask her if she wants a drink. She slaps my hand away and says I'm not funny. She's not crying this time, just pissed. She says I'm acting like a stranger. I tell her she made me one. She slams the fridge door. I tell her to leave. She finally does, slamming the front door too. Now, I'm not saying it felt good, but it didn't feel bad either. I go back to my phone, scroll social media, see that my brother's wife is posting some passive-aggressive meme about some people only call when they need something. I kind of laugh because she's always acted like Caleb is some golden child. And I'm just the spare. I get a DM from my cousin asking me if I'm okay, which, whatever, I just leave unread by Saturday Dad's side gig account is getting flagged because he can't log in. I changed the security info so he can't just reset the password. I get a call from an unknown number. It's my dad. Using someone else's phone. I suppose has got cut off because the plan changed. He's ranting, saying I'm ruining all he created. I tell him I'm not repairing anything. He can work things out like a genuine parent. He ends the call. The problem is my dad treats me this way because he always wanted a mini him. Someone who does the outside activities, the sports, the fishing. I never truly fit that Caleb did. So Caleb gets the spotlight. I simply get the duties, the dull stuff, the unseen job. I suppose Dad honestly feels I owe him for not becoming the son he wanted. I don't, though. No more. The only time I feel strange is when my nephew texts me asking if I want to play online with him. He doesn't know what's going on. He's only 10 or so. Since I don't want to be involved in it, I ignore it. My brother later texts me to say that I'm a jerk for making his child unhappy and that I'm punishing the entire family for Dad's error. I'm not being baited, therefore I don't respond. So yes, Sunday has returned. A week has passed since Father's Day. They don't have a phone, utilities, or account access, a neighbor tells me. At the store, my mom was asking customers if they knew of anyone who could assist her fix her phone. My dad's side business is essentially at a standstill. The strangest thing about all of this is that Caleb is posting less on the internet. The finest part, too, they're all waiting for me to give in. I know it. They believe that if they sufficiently guilt-trip me, I will appear as usual and make things right. Not now, I'm finished. I'll go, even though I know this isn't going to be a crazy ending. We're only beginning. Next week will be even more exciting, and I still have a couple plays to go. If things get messy, I'll provide another update. Right now, all I'm doing is watching YouTube like a villain and munching chips. The second update. This, I suppose, is part 3. And NGL, I had no idea how messy things would go. I had previously removed my name off the invoices and tech-related correspondence, as I said in the previous remark, but I had no idea how quickly the ramifications would go beyond them messaging me like irate children. The first strange thing that happened on Wednesday night was that I was cooking up some frozen noodles when I heard a loud knock on my door. I look around and my brother Caleb is there. He just keeps beating, and at first I don't even respond because I don't want to get involved. I crack the door open. He says I need to mature and stop playing games with the family's stuff, with a furious expression. He tries using his shoulder to pry open the door. I'm holding it. Tell him to relax, he says. I'm ruining everything for Dad and Mom, after receiving this look. He yells and pushes the door harder when I tell him he can contact customer service like everyone else. Nearly enters, I push him away and demand him to leave my porch. He slaps the fence as he goes after calling me a loser. For a moment, I just stand there listening to him stomp down the steps after locking the door. My mother has also been phoning. I discover when I check my phone, she tells me in a weak voice that I'm causing your father a lot of worry on her voicemail. Caleb says, Dad's company is frozen and the utilities cannot be turned back on. In the following hour, she sends me around 4 more SMS. Come chat to us in all its forms. Put an end to this? You're exacerbating it, and one that was furious. Just family does not do this. I nearly chuckle. Yes, I'm not joking. The next day, I spot my dad's car in the parking lot as I'm making my way back from the supermarket. I attempted to flee, but he caught me and called my name. He appears worn out, as if he hasn't slept. He then goes on to say that I'm being self-centered, that I should let this go, and that I am aware of how much he depends on me. I tell him that when he claimed that I wasn't his son, I didn't mind. He pretends that he has forgotten what he said, claims that I misrepresented what he said. He can't have it both ways, I tell him. I am either family or I am not. I'm not doing the work. If I'm not, I'm holding the entire family hostage, he replies, flushed. I give a shrug. Say, perhaps he ought to have considered that before slamming his car door so forcefully. Halfway across the lot, I hear it. By the weekend, my aunt, my cousin, and the person who uploaded the fishing photo are among the folks I seldom ever communicate with. Even Anita, my brother's wife. The word from Anita is, just what did you do? Caleb is going crazy. Your dad is unable to access his bank account. Mom is always sobbing. Ask them. I respond. She replies with a barrage of text about how difficult family is and that I shouldn't make this a public catastrophe. I don't respond. The group conversation comes next. All of them unmuted and began to go off. I'm acting like a baby and venting on everyone. Caleb claims, using the guilt trip. My mother claims that Grandma is extremely anxious. Dad tells me to come fix it after saying enough. I just post one message if I'm not related. Never expect me to handle household tasks. I then muted once again. Since my dad's side project apparently depends on him having access to some digital resources that I set up for him. The real fun begins on Sunday. Because my number was the initial contact, he is unable to invoice people, access the main account, and some clients are contacting my phone. Tell them to give my dad a call. It's not my issue. Dad destroys my phone. Voicemails are left one, in which he is so furious that he is practically spitting claims that I'm destroying years of work and ruining his reputation. That night, I simply deleted them. My mother visits my apartment once more. She attempts to guilt me by asking, "Are you really going to let your father's business fall apart?" when I answer the door after it has been banged on. I tell her that until they start treating me like I'm important, I won't be doing anything. The family janitor is not the only one I'm being theatrical. She says I tell her to go. She slams the door behind her as she goes out after giving me a harsh slap on the arm. The next morning, I just sit at my kitchen table and eat breakfast after locking it. At the supermarket, I run across my brother's wife, but she refuses to even look at me. My cousin texts me to ask if I could simply make things right for Grandma. Remember how I tell her I'm not family? She doesn't respond. How quickly the whole thing snowballs is what's crazy. For the week, Dad's business is essentially dead since I removed my name from the family account. Caleb's credit card has been frozen. Additionally, Mom is requesting that neighbors know of someone who can fix the Wi-Fi. According to a buddy, my dad was criticizing me at the neighborhood bar, calling me spoiled and ungrateful. I'm simply relaxing at home in the meanwhile, watching YouTube, browsing memes, and cleaning my bathroom. People I haven't spoken to in years start sending me strange texts, like my Uncle Zane, who believes that forgiveness, not retaliation, should be the focus of family. I just advise him to discuss things with my father. The problem is that I understand my dad's behavior well. Caleb was always the golden child he wished for. He just positioned me in the background because I wasn't into the same things. I was the one who fixed things all the time. The man was never asked out. He's truly having to cope with what I'd done now that I'm gone, and it's ruining him. He's not a moron. He just never imagined that I would go. I'm just tired of having them walk all over me. Even though I know some people may think I'm being cruel, they want to treat me as though I'm not welcome. Without me, they can manage their lives. At about midnight, Caleb left a message saying, "I'm breaking the family, and if I don't solve it, don't bother returning." That was the last thing I heard this weekend. I remove it, switch off my phone, and spend some time in the dark. Thus, I suppose this is the result of pushing someone too far. I'm not going to back down, but I'm not sure what will happen next. They can continue to leave irate voicemails and bang doors. It's been months since I've slept this well. If anything else crazy occurs, I'll keep you informed. I might go get some pizza. Not sure. The last update. Since there isn't much more to say until the home really burns down or something, I suppose this is the final update, avoiding forecasts. Just letting you know. Anyway, I want to thank everyone who said that I should ignore them and let them stew. Well done. Your request has been granted. I didn't have to do much at all. Simply maintained my limits and let them deal with the situation on their own. However, they were able to ruin it on their own. This week got off to a strange start. Someone knocked early on Tuesday, so I got up. Not just any knocking, but the sort where you can tell the individual is desperate or angry. The doorbell started, but I initially disregarded it. My brother's automobile is parked crookedly outside my house when I wake up. For a moment, I stood in the hallway and listened to him murmuring outside. At last, he slammed the door of his car and drove away. My phone blows up less than an hour later. Caleb sent 11 messages. It's all caps at first, then simply pick up. What did you do? She is weeping uncontrollably. Simply take it up, knowing that his wife isn't the sort to cry. I look at it and wonder who she is. Then I notice that my parents, Dad, and even my aunt had all missed calls. I simply prepared coffee and turned off my phone. I refuse to be involved in any morning drama. Who's waiting in my lobby when I go to check my mail a few hours later? However, my mother. In keeping with her overall "I'm not crying" attitude, she is wearing sunglasses. Are you really going to let this family fall apart? She asks me. I didn't start it. I say, your dad can't even look at your brother at the moment, she adds, Anita. According to my brother's wife, she may move in with her sister and take the kids. Grandma also calls every day to inquire about what has transpired. Ask Dad. I advise her. You know he won't, she says. She then firmly holds my arm, and I order her to release it. She just releases, go and blocks the door in the hallway, promising to make sure Dad apologizes if I come over and assist them for a day. I tell her that I want nothing and that you can't offer me anything. Bruce, you're acting so cold, she adds. You're not this person. Perhaps you don't really know me. I shrug. She slams the lobby door behind her as she leaves, shaking her head. After just 5 minutes, my brother calls once more. His voice cracks as he says, "You ruined everything," in these voicemails. Dad claims he won't speak to anyone until the business is fixed. Bags are being packed by Anita. The children are in tears. I simply browse my feed as I sit there. A communication from my cousin reaches me. Just, is everything all right? I don't even respond. I suppose the fact that I refused to give in is what really got to them. After a few days of being treated in silence, I assumed they would simply go on and work things out. But no, they're disintegrating entirely. I suppose they always assumed that I would simply give in and make things right if they pushed me hard enough. They genuinely don't know what to do now that I'm not. By Thursday, I'm receiving texts from folks I don't often communicate with. In his message, my Uncle Zane advised me to forgive for Grandma's sake and consider the wider picture. Your dad's business is going to fail and no one can access any of the accounts. My aunt tells me over the phone I say to her what I said to everyone else, no longer my concern. My brother truly returns that evening and knocks on my door once again. I crack it open. I push him back when he attempts to push past. "You're going to ruin this family," he says. And I tell him that perhaps it wasn't powerful at all if it was so simple to demolish. "I'm being theatrical," he tries to say. I inform him that my role as the backup plan is over. With his hands up, he adds, "All right, do what you want," and then he leaves. My mother texts me on Friday morning to inform me that your father is ill. He isn't eating. He's being tortured by you. I simply keep it on red, cleaning my flat, viewing pointless movies, and doing other everyday tasks take up my day. And I can't stop thinking about how crazy it is that I was the one who made sure the payments were paid for years. The firm could function. The accounts were put up and no one seemed to care. No one even took attention. To be honest, but as soon as I stop, everything breaks down and I'm portrayed as the bad guy. They never bothered to learn how to do this stuff, even though they could have. They simply thought I would always be. On Saturday night, my brother's wife, Anita, sends me a direct message. "I don't care what happened," she says. "The children are afraid." Caleb refuses to communicate. Additionally, your dad sits in the living room and looks at nothing. I don't respond. My dad and I met up at the store yesterday. He barely gave me a glance. Sounded like he hadn't slept in days. Muttered something, then simply shook his head and continued to move. So we're at that point. I still have a ton of unread messages on my phone. The majority of them. "Please just speak with us. You are necessary to us." 11 consecutive SMS were sent by my brother, who was simultaneously pleading and furious. Grandma even called and left a message that said, "I hope you come home soon, but I don't know what's going on." I don't call her back. I know some people will say I should feel bad, but honestly, I don't. Not right now. I spent too many years being the family ghost, cleaning up messes nobody saw. I'm not going back just because they're scared of their own mess. They made their choice. I'm just giving them exactly what they wanted. So yes, I guess this is the moment when I quit posting, since honestly, I don't even care what happens next. I'm simply going to live my life, eat my chips, and let them figure out how to be a family without me. Natural. It's sort of serene story. 3. My parents didn't even inform me when they sold the family cottage. I learned about it from a Facebook post that had my sister grinning and a caption, "Our wedding present." "Thank you, parents." My mother chuckled and remarked, "You really think you earned anything?" When I inquired about the status of my portion, then she gave an eye roll. She is beginning her true life. It's a waste of space. My father also added, "Even so, what would you do with it? As with anything else, make it into one of your little projects and ruin it." They treated me as if I were a joke. I just responded, "You got it. I appreciate you resolving that." After 2 months, I did a single action that completely blew everything apart. They are now leaving voicemails daily. "Talk to us, please." "That's not how we meant it." "All right, I normally hide, but I need to get this out of my system since it has been bothering me. Hold on tight." If you've ever wondered how far parents would go to choose their favorites. I apologize in advance if this becomes messy, but I'll try to prevent it from becoming too long. To be honest, I'm still feeling a little pissed off. Here's the deal. Then, this antique cabin belongs to my family. The family has had it since before I was born, so it's nothing special. The travel from the city to this lake is around 45 minutes. It's where I grew up each summer. Danielle, my sister, and I enjoy playing cards, going fishing, and playing endless Monopoly games where someone always quits in the middle. To put things in perspective, Danielle is a couple of years younger than me and has always been the golden kid, primarily because she followed the rules that I did not. In a strange manner, parents have always expressed their appreciation for those who pursue the route. I've never really been like that. I like to do things my own way, but I don't consider myself a rebel or anything. Now fast forward to the present. Years ago, I moved out. I seldom return home. Chat in the family group passed away about 2 years ago, unless my dad sends me a meme. Every now and then, I suppose I've always felt a little different from other people, but whatever. My life is my own. It always felt like Switzerland in the cabin, though. You know, neutral territory. It has a lot of history, but it's not exactly a mansion or anything. The deck was built by my grandfather himself. My mom is completely enamored with her ridiculous collection of strange mugs that no one is permitted to use. Even as the family grew farther away, it always seemed to be the one thing that truly belonged to us both. About 2 months ago, the strangeness began. Saturday is a random day. I'm just doom scrolling on my phone. I'm tagged in this Facebook thing by someone I hardly ever talk to anymore. It's a picture of Danielle standing in front of the cabin looking like she's at an influencer photo shoot, and I almost ignore it, but then I click. The part that truly stopped me was the caption, "Our wedding present." Thank you, parents. It took me a minute to comprehend that, similar to a wedding present. What kind of wedding present? Danielle has been engaged for a while, but nobody said anything about the cabin. I text her, get left on read. I figured, okay, maybe it's just a weird caption, but then I see all these comments from her friends congratulating her on getting the cabin, talking about how lucky she is to start her new life in such a special place. My stomach just drops. I scroll and there's my mom chiming in saying how happy they are to give Danielle this fresh start. So that's how I found out the cabin is gone. Not from my parents, not from Danielle, not even in a family chat, just a Facebook post, public for everyone but me. Obviously, I call my mom. She doesn't pick up. I try my dad. He sends me straight to voicemail. I send another SMS. Nothing. At this point, I'm not even angry. Just confused. Like maybe there's some explanation. Maybe they're just letting her use it for the wedding or something. Nope. 3 days later, my mom finally calls. It's not even a proper conversation. She's weirdly chipper, like nothing's happened. I ask her. So what's going on with the cabin? Did you sell it to Danielle? She laughs, actually laughs and goes, so you really think you'd get anything from then? She sighs. Like I'm a kid who doesn't get how the world works and says Danielle starting a real life and I'm just wasting space. What would I even do with it? Turn it into one of my little projects and screw it up like everything else? My dad chimes in. He's on speaker, says if it had been up to him, they would have sold it years ago. At least now it's going to someone who'll appreciate it. I try to ask what about my share? Didn't Granddad say it was supposed to be split? Mom just rolls her eyes audible over the phone and says, I haven't earned anything. Danielle deserves it because she listens. She's not off chasing stupid ideas. My dad starts into this whole thing about how I never finish anything, how I just let it rot. I try to say that's not true. I did all that work on the deck last year, but he talks over me, says that doesn't count. It's just busy work. At this point, I say fine, thanks for clearing that up, she says. Don't be dramatic, and hangs up. I just sat there for a minute. Not sure what I expected, but that wasn't it. I've always known they saw me as the lost cause, but hearing it that bluntly, like I'm just in the way, kind of hit different, not in a self-pity way, just IDK. It's like I wasn't even in the conversation. They talked about me in the third person like I wasn't there, like I was this annoying ex-friend they had to deal with because I showed up at Thanksgiving sometimes. No mention of my name in the Facebook post either, just erased. So I messaged Danielle again, asked if she knew I wasn't told. She finally answers. Super short. Says our parents handled everything. She assumed I didn't care, then says she's busy with wedding stuff and leaves it at that, I reply, asking if she actually owns it now or if it's just for the wedding. She goes silent again. I try calling my dad once more. He actually picks up but immediately goes off with this spiel about how I should be glad for Danielle, how I only create problems if I was involved. He says if I start poking around, it'll just ruin her chance at happiness. I say, I simply want to know what occurred. And he snaps back, says, don't call again unless it's important. Then he hangs up. At this point, I'm simply done. I text my mom, tell her I get it, I'm out. She shoots back a thumbs up. Not even a word, just the emoji. Rest of the week was a blur. I tried not to think about it, but then tiny stuff started showing up. My landlady claimed someone tried to contact regarding my former address, stating they were related and wanted details. The family group chat. Dead quiet, except for Danielle's wedding updates. Not a single mention of the cottage from anybody else. Leica simply went, extended family is either unaware or pretending not to know. I started reading through old emails, trying to recall whether there was ever any paperwork concerning the cottage. I remember my grandfather said something years ago about keeping it in the family, but I never saw anything official. I questioned my aunt about it. She resides in a different state. She just remarked, oh, I thought your parents would talk to you about that, even though we're not really close. Then she shifted the topic. No one wants to become engaged. That's where I'm at. Then the family cabin is no longer there. Nothing until it is widely shared on Facebook. When I inquire about it, my parents treat me like a leech. It seems that I'm simply background noise while Danielle has a fresh start. I'm not the kind of person who will simply accept this and go on. You can't act as though I don't exist, but I don't care if they want to play favorites. Because I don't meet your definition of success, you don't have the right to eliminate me. I'm not going to let them get away with this, but I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm not going to let them pretend that I never existed and simply grin for Facebook. My parents may continue to ignore my calls, but they will have to deal with me in one way or another the next time I see Danielle. One update. I suppose this is part 2. Thank you for the last time's remarks and direct messages. Even those who advise me to simply move on or anything that isn't taking place. In case you missed the beginning, my sister Danielle received the family cottage from my parents as a wedding present, not even informed me. After I discovered it on Facebook, they essentially claimed that I had never earned anything and treated me like a bother. I didn't continue. I appreciate you addressing it, but I certainly wasn't going to ignore it. The strangest thing is how completely natural everything appeared. For example, my parents frequently shared food photos and dad jokes on Facebook pretending nothing had occurred. There were only wedding countdowns on Danielle's feed, random old pictures of her at the water. In the family group chat, not a single person was mentioned. My aunt also quit communicating, even though she used to at least send a Christmas meme. They appeared to have practiced it. They all pretended that I was only background noise. I then began to poke around. Not as good as a detective, but enough to see what was truly happening. I recalled my grandfather emphasizing that the cabin was for the entire family. Not just one individual, I assumed there must be some record. Even though he passed away years ago, I began by going through some old emails and texts, as well as some paper files. I still kept in a box. Not very formal. Granddad CC'd everyone on old group emails on repairs, and he had brought up the trust a few times. That's what stood out, yet I hardly recalled it. According to him, the cabin was in a family trust and was intended to be retained for all of the children, not just one. I looked up a lot of information regarding property trusts on Google before coming across the website of the county assessor. I found the deed, albeit it wasn't really enjoyable. As it turns out, my parents were trustees, but in theory, the family was meant to gain from everything. A provision pertaining to equal access and benefit was really included. It wasn't like they sold their own house or something, so it made my fury boil a little more. It was meant to be for us both. When I questioned my aunt about it once again, she just advised me to speak with my parents. She refused to become engaged. I occasionally get to visit my cousin Philip around the holidays, and he texted me to ask whether I was truly upset over the cabin incident. People were obviously speaking, but not to me. Yeah, obviously he just said that sucks, but there's not much you can do, I informed him before shifting the topic. I am now becoming enraged. The entire family, not just my parents, should be held accountable for assuming that this is the norm. I forwarded Danielle's Facebook post to the family group chat after taking a screenshot of it. Nothing to say, only the picture. It was 2 days before I received a single response. At last, my mother sends me a private message telling me that I'm being immature and that I should let Danielle enjoy her time. You could have at least told me, I said. She disregards it and tells me to stop making difficulty if I want to be included in the future. The only way I can be family, I respond, is if I stop talking and smile at you, revealing the one thing my grandfather intended us to share. I'm left on red by her. I saw my dad in the grocery store around that time. He's purchasing steaks. The next aisle is where I am. He sighs as if I were a headache when he sees me. Why didn't you talk to me about the cabin? I ask him gently. Saying that you never truly cared anyhow, he simply shrugs, and you simply begin one of your tasks, and then abandon the area in disarray. I claim that last year I handled the majority of the deck repairs. Do you recall? He claims that you didn't really contribute. You simply wanted to toy with the tools. You might have at least given me a chance, I tell him. We did what we believed was best for the family. He says, you just argue with us over everything, and Danielle deserves a new beginning. You know this is wrong, I tell him, and with a literal roll of his eyes, he leaves with his cart. Just standing there, I can hardly believe it. After that, I made an effort to speak with Danielle face to face. I wanted to make things clear, so I messaged her. Although she claimed to be extremely busy, she could make coffee. We met at a location close to her apartment, and she was immediately glued to her phone, hardly glancing up. Did you know? I asked. They kept it from me. I thought you knew Mom and Dad handled everything. She sighs, adding, and I don't want drama before the wedding. Do you really care that you essentially stole our sole possession from Granddad? I ask, you never wanted to settle down, she adds. You said that you would never use it. Mom also said that you were okay with it. She shrugs and responds, well, it's done now, to my statement that I never said that. She simply looks down at her phone again after I stood up and pushed my chair back a bit too hard. I walk away without bidding farewell. My mother sends me a lengthy message over the course of the following week about the importance of family unity and how I should encourage Danielle's new chapter. You won't be invited to the wedding if you continue doing this, she says. I take a screen grab of that and forward it to her. Don't text. It's really awkward now. According to Philip, my grandfather's brother saw my screenshot and inquired as to why I was never able to respond. So I've heard that some of the older relatives are asking questions. My mom texts me in a rage, accusing me of exposing personal family issues and ruining her reputation. I think you shouldn't have posted everything on Facebook if you wanted it to be private. She gives it another thumbs up. Screw it, I decide I'm not going to remain silent. I send an email asking if anyone has more information about the trust, and I begin to see some of the extended family. There has been a lot of silence, although Uncle Stanley, who has always had a strange interest in legal matters, claims to recall certain terms of the trust, but lacks the supporting documentation. He says, I'll have to ask my parents for the documents directly if I want to view it. I send my parents an email requesting copies. No response. I therefore arrive to my parents' house. I don't make advance calls. My dad appears astonished, then irritated when he opens the door. I request to view the trust documents immediately. You're not coming in, he says. If you intend to start a fight, then no. He places a hand on my shoulder to halt me. Even though I've already stepped past him, I ignore it. From the kitchen, my mother cries, You're being ridiculous. Leave now. Not until I see the papers. I answer. My dad blocks the corridor by stepping in front of me. You can't ignore me and act as like nothing is wrong. I tell him, we did what we had to do, my mother replies, slamming a cabinet. Danielle is not only squandering time on projects, she is genuinely creating a life. I don't count because I snapped. All she says is that you made your decisions. Cohabitate with them. I head out, slamming the door behind me. I'm not sure if I'll be called by the police. I spend an hour driving around listening to loud music while reflecting on how this whole situation got so out of control, I can't stop repeating the same lines in my mind. How did I always get the shaft since I didn't work the 9 to 5? Get married young? Get Danielle's home routine. My parents constantly gave the impression that following their identical strategy was the only way to succeed. I suppose that my independence was merely evidence to them that I would never mature. Danielle texted me the next day and said, "Why are you making everything so difficult? Simply let it go." This is meant to be a joyful moment, I respond. Because I'm inconvenient. You don't have the right to ignore me. I'm blocked by her. I've been slamming doors and not really communicating, so now my roommate wants to know what's going on. He responds, "Dude, that's so messed up. You gotta do something." After I tell him a little, I'm not sure yet, but I agree. However, I'm aware that I'm not going to let them get away with it. I begin learning more about property transfers, trust, and other related topics. I learn that I can compel an accounting of the trust's management, but I require concrete evidence. I reason that if I am unable to obtain the papers, perhaps I can at least create enough noise for them to respond. That's where I am then. Family's acting as like I'm not real. Danielle is using the cottage to arrange her wedding. My parents are behaving as though I'm a mere footnote. However, some members of the extended family are already beginning to inquire, and I'm not going to back down. I'm louder than they realize, but they still want to eliminate me. They will make the next move. However, I'm not going to wait for an invitation. I've only just begun. The second update. I suppose that everyone anticipates what an update will look like at this point. I learned to forgive or whatever in therapy. No, you don't know me at all if you believe that I was only going to allow them to disparage me and get away with it. If you haven't read the previous blogs, my parents gave my sister Danielle the family cabin as a wedding present without notifying me in public, pretended that I didn't exist, and then retaliated when I criticized them. They essentially informed me that because I didn't live their lifestyle, I had never earned anything. After looking around, I discovered that the cottage was meant for both children. No one in the family, not even Princess Danielle, wanted to become involved or acknowledge it. This is what transpired next. The first strange thing is that Danielle begins sharing a number of old photos of her cabin, but she consistently disables comments on any of them in which I am tagged. All of a sudden, Mom is posting motivational sayings about family harmony and forgiveness. Very subtle, isn't it? My cousins sent me a few direct messages inquiring about the situation. Additionally, I tell them directly, not a drama, only the facts. At least a few of them began like my writings on family justice, even if I can sense that some of them don't want to choose sides. Enough to know that people are whispering, but not much. Then, unexpectedly, I receive a letter from the county at my apartment. Similar, like real mail. This is a note regarding the cabin property's upkeep cost disclosures. I had no idea that I was on any lists. It turned out that some old documents from when I assisted with repairs still had my name on them. There are receipts and other documents. Everything was maintained by my grandfather. When my dad forgot, I physically paid for supplies and paid a lot of taxes, as I discovered when I went through my old emails 3 summers ago. I print everything out, open a file, and call the county office to find out my choices because I paid taxes and upkeep. I'm not trying to play legal. They suggest that since I'm a beneficiary in theory, I may demand an accounting of the trust or submit a claim for payment if I have records. So I begin the paperwork. It takes a few days, but I formally request compensation for my portion of the costs and a complete financial accounting of the trust. In addition to looking for Danielle and her fiancé, I send copies to the aunt and uncle who were closest to Granddad since I'm not a moron. I've included the emails, the receipts, and the equal benefit provision I discovered. Just the facts, no drama, no threats. Things become hot at this point. The extremely formal parents of Danielle's fiancé unexpectedly messaged me to inquire about any potential legal issues with the wedding present. Ask my folks. I say all I want to know is what Granddad won. The wedding group chat is the next thing I know I was still in it. Yes, side messages are exploding, and Danielle's pals are inquiring as to why the property was dropped. I just respond by asking my folks like I always do, without even saying hello. My mother phones me and starts talking about how I'm destroying Danielle's special time and how I have to make everything about myself. You did this, not me, I say. You could have spoken to me like a grown-up. You're just jealous, she replies. Danielle has something that you will never have. I tell her that I'm not interested in what she has. I'm not going to back down, and I want what I'm entitled to. 5 minutes after she hangs up, my dad texts me and tells me that I'm being foolish. Drop it now to avoid embarrassing everyone. I tell him that before you handed away anything that wasn't yours, I should have considered that. He doesn't read me. When Danielle calls and I answer, she is weeping. Why are you doing this? He says. All I want is a lovely wedding. Why won't you allow me to be joyful? You're no longer a kid, I tell her. When you take away the one thing we both had, you can't pretend to be innocent. Mom told me you didn't care, she says. You never even ask. I tell her. She begins to shout. She accuses me of being selfish. As I begin to shout, I advise her to mature. She ends the call. The group chat is no longer active. Most of the time, random relatives start texting me. For the sake of your family, can you just let it go? I ask my parents and tell them I am not the issue, Philip. My cousin texts me and says, I understand why you're upset. However, won't this only make people despise you? They already do, in my opinion. What's the distinction? In the interim, I ask that the cabin's property taxes be reevaluated. I am aware that the annual bill will increase, particularly considering Danielle recently received it as a gift. She is now responsible for the entire amount rather than just the previous family rate. I also request an audit of all previous expenses by calling the utility companies. Since my name was on the account for years, I send Danielle an invoice for half of the repairs and taxes. I paid out of pocket with CC to her fiancé and his parents. I'm not bluffing. I have receipts for everything. Lumber shingles, paint, the dumb new fridge Dad made me split. My dad shows up at my apartment, bangs on the door. I crack it open. He tries to push in. He is blocked by me. He says, You need to stop. You're turning everyone against us. I say, I'm not doing anything. You didn't start. He tries to get in my face. I shove his hand off my door frame. He starts yelling, says, You're not getting a dime. You're not family if you go through with this. I tell him, then I assume I never was. I slam the door. Now I'm getting emails from the county and the trust administrator requesting for copies of all papers. Apparently, my parents never properly closed the trust or alerted everyone, which is a major. No, I forward everything. Danielle's fiancé's parents start asking questions in the wedding group chat, and I just post the trust clause and say, ask my parents. Then I quit the chat. Aunt Doris, who's never liked my mom, phones me and says I'm delighted. Someone finally stood up to them. This has been coming for years. I ask her whether she recalls the trust detail. She responds not really, but grandfather always wanted it fair. I thank her and hang up. Last thing my mom attempts to call, I don't answer. She leaves a voicemail, says, please, that's not how we meant it. Everything will be ruined by you. Simply speak with us. We can put this right. I remove it. Thus, the wedding is now uncertain. The parents of Danielle's fiancé are furious. My parents are unable to explain the impending increase in property taxes to the family. because I have scattered the receipts all over the place. At least they're not acting like I'm invisible, even when everyone is angry with me. I understand that some may think this is trivial or something, but in all honesty, try being erased and see how relaxed you feel. I'm not finished yet. Money isn't the issue here. The goal is to avoid being regarded like garbage. They were burned because they wanted to play favorites. The upcoming update ought to be intriguing, awaiting the first person to lose it. The last update. So here's how all of this actually went down. I wasn't even going to post again for a while, but NGL, the amount of voicemails and texts I got this morning is next level. If you've ever wondered what happens when you stop playing the good kid and start actually making people face themselves, here you go. It started with a group chat lighting up at like 6 a.m., which is already a bad sign. My phone's blowing up, and it's not even my parents. It's Danielle, and she's left 14 voicemails by noon. I counted not jokingly. She is screaming, "What did you do? Dad is constantly requesting you. Just pick up, please. Everything will be ruined by you. Why are you doing this? Are you happy? Just stop, please." And on and on. I just let them sit there. The weirdest thing is how quickly people switch up when they realize you're not bluffing. My parents always counted on me being too stubborn or too tired to actually fight back. Like my whole life, they figured I'd get pissed. Say my piece, then drop it and let Danielle get whatever she wanted because she was the one who listens. That was always the gig. She'd do the milestones. I'd get called the project guy or wasting space. My dad's thing was always, "You can't finish what you start. You screw up everything you touch." My mom would just sigh and say, "Danielle actually tries. Why can't you be more like her?" I used to think it was just parenting, but at some point they stopped seeing me as family and started seeing me as a joke. So yeah, I stopped playing after I filed for the trust accounting and the tax reassessment hit. Everything got awkward real fast. Turns out they never actually finished closing the trust, so legally, nothing could be transferred. The county flagged the transfer, and now there's a pile of paperwork nobody wants to deal with. Danielle's fiancé's parents are suddenly a lot less enthusiastic about the wedding gift. My parents are getting calls from relatives asking what the hell happened because I made sure everyone saw the receipts. I got a couple emails from old family friends. Is everything all right? Which is honestly hilarious since they never cared before. The best part, if you want to call it that, was when I ran into my mom at the grocery store. She was by the deli looking at her phone, and when she saw me, she just glared. I walked right past her. She tried to block my cart, said I was being dramatic. Said, "Nobody wants this. Why can't you just let it go?" I told her you never wanted me to be family unless I was silent. She slapped the side of my cart and stormed off. I didn't flinch at all. Danielle tried texting again, then switched to calling. I answered once just because I was tired of the notification. She was crying, saying, "You don't know how hard this is for me. Mom and Dad are fighting. The wedding might be off. How could you do this to us?" I told her I didn't do anything. "You all did this when you decided one person mattered and the other didn't?" She said, "You're so bitter. You're ruining everything," I said. "I'm not sorry," and hung up. Then I blocked her. I'm just done. My dad showed up at my place one last time. I opened the door. He tried to push his way in. I blocked him. He shouted, "You've ruined our family. You're going to regret this." I told him, "You already ruined it. You just thought I'd never notice." He shoved the door. I shoved it back and slammed it. That was it. After that, it was just silence. No more group chat, no more invites. My Aunt Doris texted. Said, "Good for you." They needed to be taken down a peg. Philip sent me a meme about family drama speedruns. Most people just went quiet. I don't care. I'm not looking for a trophy or some fake apology. The fallout, weddings postponed. Danielle's fiancé's family is demanding all the paperwork before they move forward. The county's got my parents on the hook for back taxes and possible penalties because they tried to skip the rules. Everyone knows what happened and nobody's pretending anymore. My parents keep leaving voicemails, all the classics. "Talk to us, please." That's not how we meant it. We just wanted the best for everyone. Can't we start over? No, I'm not interested. The thing is, I'm not even mad anymore. I'm not happy either. Just done. I got my point across. I didn't forgive. I didn't forget. I didn't heal. I just made sure the people who tried to erase me had to live with the mess they made. If they want to clean it up, that's on them. So, yeah, sometimes you don't get a neat ending. Sometimes you just get the truth out in the open, and that's enough. If you're reading this and you're the invisible kid in your family, trust me, you're a lot harder to erase than they think.